Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When I came back from fighting the flames, my house was still standing, barely singed. 2 days later, bulldozers arrived to tear it down. The HOA said I was dead. They had forged FEMA papers, but I wasn't dead, and I wasn't giving up without a fight. I'd fought fire before. Controlled burns, backfires, hell, even that Nightmare Canyon blaze in Butte County back in 2016. But nothing quite prepared me for the day. The sky over Sonoma turned the color of dried blood, and the wind howled like it had a grudge. When the order came down for a mandatory evacuation, most of my neighborhood was packed and gone within the hour. SUVs loaded with kids, dogs, heirlooms. A few of them stopped to yell at me from their windows. "You coming? I than. You need a ride?" I just shook my head and pointed to the badge sewn into my sleeve. Volunteer Fire Rescue, Station 49. My name's Ithon Bradley, 39 years old, former Marine, now contractor and part-time firefighter. My house sits on a 3-acre lot that my grandfather cleared by hand back in the 50s. Redwood frame, stone chimney, wraparound porch with a swing, I rebuilt myself. It's not just a house, it's legacy. You don't walk away from that when the flames come knocking. So I stayed. For 9 straight days, I ran on burnt coffee, protein bars, and adrenaline. We slept in shifts at the staging grounds, faces smeared with soot, radios crackling every time the fire changed direction. We cut lines, sprayed retardant, hosed down anything that could burn. I saw houses go up like matchsticks. I saw a deer run out of the smoke with its fur on fire. I saw a man stand on his roof with a garden hose, screaming at the sky. But somehow, my house held. It got singed, sure, lost a section of gutter, my truck's paint blistered, but structurally, it was there, standing proud, a stubborn middle finger to the inferno. The fire danced around it like it knew it wasn't welcome. I didn't think about home much while we were on the line. There wasn't time. You tunnel vision, or you die. But on day 9, when CAL FIRE finally radioed the all clear and the mop-up crews rolled in, I grabbed my gear bag, peeled off my ash-caked bunker coat, and drove home with the windows down, letting the wind carry the stink of smoke out of my nose. What I came back to was a ghost town. My street looked like a war zone. Scorched trees leaned like broken teeth. Foundations smoldered where houses used to be. The air had that awful cooked plastic smell you never forget once you've smelled it. And there, at the end of the road, still shaded by the same massive oak my grandfather planted the day I was born, was my house, blackened at the edges but intact, a miracle. The next morning, I hosed down the roof, checked the crawl space, knocked out a loose shutter, still solid, no structural breaches. The power was out, but the solar bank I'd installed last spring kept the fridge running and the radio alive. I made coffee, sat on the porch, and listened to a playlist of Johnny Cash and wind chimes. That's when I saw her, Karen Hale, blonde bob, designer boots, clipboard like it was surgically attached to her hand. I'd hoped maybe the fire had scorched some sense into her, but no such luck. She was pacing the sidewalk across the street like she was inspecting troops. Now, Karen's not just my neighbor, she's the self-declared overlord of the Rolling Pines HOA. That would be fine if I were a member, which I'm not. Never have been. My property predates the HOA by nearly 30 years. I made that clear when she first showed up at my door last year, demanding I remove my non-standard mailbox. I told her she could try removing it herself. Just be sure to sign the waiver first. She didn't wave when she saw me. Just stood there staring like I was a ghost. Then she turned and walked off at double speed, heels crunching through soot and ash. Strange, but not unusual for her. Karen's the kind of person who thinks politeness is a sign of weakness. I didn't think much of it until 2 days later, when I went into town for supplies. The hardware store was running on generators, but the owner, Joe, knows me. He handed over a contractor bundle. Plywood, tarp, 10-gallon gas cans, no charge. Said I'd earned it. On the way home, I passed a couple of dump trucks and a yellow excavator rumbling up my road. I figured they were headed to the Miller place 2 lots down. That house had gone up like a bonfire on day 3. Nothing left but nails and rebar. I pulled into my driveway, unloaded the gas cans, and froze. There was a plastic ribbon strung across the front steps. Bright orange. Condemned. Unsafe structure. Do not enter. The hell? There hadn't been any inspectors, no notices, no phone call, and then I saw the document stapled to my door. A printed form with Rolling Pines HOA in the header and what looked like a FEMA logo next to it. Poorly aligned, pixelated. Definitely not official. It declared my home structurally unsalvageable and authorized emergency clearance and debris removal. My chest went cold. I yanked the paper down and stormed over to the next house still standing, Trev's place. He'd bugged out early, but he was back now, hosing ash off his porch. "Trev, you seen anyone messing with my place?" He looked nervous. I thought you were dead, man." "What?" Karen said. "They didn't have your name on any evac list. She said you'd probably gotten caught up in the fire. That's why they approved the teardown." My mouth dried out. They. HOA. Emergency vote. She pushed it through yesterday. I didn't wait for more. I ran back to my porch, heart pounding, and looked up the road. The dump trucks I'd passed earlier weren't heading to the Miller place. They were coming to mine, and behind them, crawling up the hill like a slow, grinning beast, was the excavator. I stood there on the porch with that forged FEMA document crumpling in my fist as the rumble of diesel engines echoed louder. The first dump truck turned the corner, lumbering toward my driveway like it knew exactly where it was going. Dust and soot kicked up in its wake, turning the air gray. Behind it came the excavator, its bucket swinging casually, like a weapon that hadn't yet picked its victim. I stepped off the porch and waved both arms in the air. The driver in the lead truck slowed to a crawl and rolled down his window. "Morning," he said, like this was just another Tuesday. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "Site clearance, sir. Got the order yesterday. Structure's condemned. We're just here to do the job." "There's nothing condemned here," I snapped. "This house is mine. I live here. It's standing. You don't touch a damn thing." He blinked a few times. "Sir, we were told the owner died in the fire. We've got the authorization forms, contracts, clearance notices, all signed and sealed." "By who?" He rifled through a clipboard and handed me a sheaf of papers. At the top, Rolling Pines Homeowners Association Emergency Resolution 11B, signed by Karen Hale, acting president, with several more names scribbled below hers. Attached was a blurry structural damage assessment on what looked like HOA letterhead. No city, no fire marshal, no FEMA. Just a checklist with boxes like roofline compromised and fire residue observed. The kicker: the official structural assessment was signed by someone named Charles Hinton, listed as certified emergency contractor. I knew that name. He wasn't a city inspector. He used to mow lawns for the HOA's landscaping contracts before getting fired for billing double hours. I'd caught him trimming a hedge with a cigarette in his mouth. "You better shut your engines off," I said through gritted teeth. "You so much as dent a shingle on this house. I'm calling the sheriff, the fire chief, and my lawyer. This is my home. I'm not dead." The driver looked uneasy. The second truck stopped behind him. One of the crew leaned out. "Hey, boss, what's the holdup?" "Owner's here," the first guy muttered. "Says it's a mistake." While they conferred, I jogged to the side of the road where a white SUV was idling, hazard lights blinking, the license plate frame read, "I sell homes you envy." Of course. Karen was inside, sunglasses on, tapping at her phone. She rolled the window down halfway when she saw me approaching. "You've got about 5 seconds to explain yourself," I said, planting my hands on the car roof. She looked surprised, almost amused. "Ithan, you're alive." "No shit." "Well, that changes a few things." "No, it changes everything." "Who gave you the right to declare my house condemned?" "Where the hell did you get FEMA clearance paperwork?" Karen sighed like I was being unreasonable. "We were operating under emergency provisions. Your property posed a fire risk. Half the street burned, ethane. Your house was barely holding up. There were embers, structural smoke damage. Our emergency committee convened and voted to act swiftly. It's called community protection." "There's no community left," I spat. "You forged federal documents. You hired a lawn guy to write a damage report. This is criminal." Karen clicked her tongue. "No, this is proactive stewardship. And frankly, your house is in the way. We've identified this area as an ideal location for the community relief pavilion." My jaw clenched. "You're building a fucking clubhouse on my grave." She didn't even flinch. "It's going to be multi-use. Relief, meetings, maybe events. The neighborhood needs a symbol of resilience." "And you picked my land?" "It was available, and let's be honest, you were presumed dead. There were rumors. Your truck was seen at a burn zone. Your name wasn't on any evac manifests." I took a step back. The air suddenly felt thinner. So, instead of calling anyone, instead of waiting 72 hours like the law requires, you filed papers and called in bulldozers. Karen finally removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were cold, clinical. Do you have any idea how hard it's been managing this disaster? Coordinating cleanup, handling distraught homeowners, negotiating with insurers? I've done everything I could to hold this place together. This house is just collateral. And frankly, if you're going to come back and start a fight, maybe you should have stayed gone. I stared at her. For a split second, I think I forgot how to breathe. Then I turned around and marched back to the trucks. "Shut it down," I barked. "Now." To their credit, the foreman obeyed. The excavator operator hopped down and walked over, chewing on sunflower seeds. "Look, man, we don't want trouble. We were told this was all cleared." It's not. And if I see a single track mark on that lawn, I swear I'll sue every subcontractor down to the guy who washes your tires. They backed out. Karen drove off without another word. I spent the rest of the day sitting on the porch with my shotgun across my lap, just in case someone else got the bright idea to rescue the neighborhood from my home. That night, I called the county building department. No record of condemnation. No FEMA files. No authorized contractor reports. Nothing. My house wasn't just mistakenly targeted. It was hunted. The next morning, I woke up on the porch. My back was killing me, and the stock of my shotgun had left a diagonal imprint across my chest. I hadn't meant to fall asleep out there, but after what happened the day before, I wasn't about to leave my property undefended, not even for a second. I went inside, took a piss in the half-lit bathroom, no power still, and brewed coffee on the camp stove I kept for emergencies. I needed help. Real help. I drove into town, which was still running on skeleton crews and backup generators. The place looked like someone had shaken it inside a snow globe filled with ash. I parked outside Station 49, the volunteer firehouse I'd served out of for the last 5 years. Most of the guys were still out in the hills helping with cleanup and flare-ups. But the person I came to see was in her usual spot, corner office, second floor, window facing the parking lot. Captain Rebecca Bex Morales, ex-Marine like me. Fierce as hell, built like a linebacker and smarter than anyone in a 50-mile radius. She was on the phone when I walked in, but when she saw my face, she ended the call with a brisk, "I'll call you back." "You look like shit," she said. "Good morning to you too." I dropped the forged FEMA clearance and HOA resolution on her desk. She read them once, twice, then looked up. "You're kidding." "Nope." "She really thought you were dead." She said there were rumors. No evac records. Bex leaned back, lips pressed thin. "Jesus Christ, I thought, this is bad." "Worse than you think," I said. She had an excavator 50 feet from my front porch. Bex turned to her computer, started pulling up county databases, property records, FEMA coordination logs. Nothing. No snipe about delays in emergency filing. No pending demolition orders. No damage report officially filed on my address. All that paper Karen had waved in front of my face the day before. Ghosts. "You need a lawyer," Bex said, "and fast." I was hoping you'd say that. I slid a contact card across her desk. "You remember Ashley Reyes?" Bex nodded. "Property rights attorney. Used to work with FEMA's fraud division, didn't she? She's the one who helped me fight off that power line easement back in 2020. You trust her? She once made a county supervisor cry in public." "I trust her." I called Ashley on speaker. She answered on the second ring. "Hi, Than. You're alive." "Yeah, seems like that's a controversial opinion right now." "Talk to me." I explained everything, briefly, calmly, through clenched teeth. When I finished, there was a pause. "They tried to demolish your home based on forged documents." "Correct." "Without city or county authorization." "Correct." "And the HOA thinks that somehow gives them jurisdiction over a property that isn't legally under their authority." "You're catching on quick." Ashley exhaled, slow and measured. "I'm coming up. Text me a picture of everything they gave you and get ready to dig. We're going to find out exactly how deep Karen's shovel went." She arrived that evening. High heels clicking on scorched pavement, tablet in hand. No nonsense. The kind of woman who made bureaucrats sweat. We set up a makeshift war room in my kitchen. Folding table, battery lanterns, files. Ashley pulled out a scanner, took high-res images of every fake document I'd yanked off my front door, and started making calls. Within 48 hours, we had the first cracks in the wall. 1. The FEMA authorization included formatting that hadn't been used since 2018. It also listed a regulation number that had been repealed during COVID funding restructuring. Rookie forgery mistake. 2. The emergency contractor, Charles Hinton, not only had he never been licensed as a structural assessor, his business had been suspended last year after he lost a retaining wall project into a creek. 3. The HOA's emergency vote didn't just lack quorum, it had included 2 signatories who'd already moved out of the neighborhood 6 months prior. One of them, a retired dentist named Barry Lang, was now living in Arizona and happily emailed Ashley to confirm he hadn't signed a damn thing. But the final nail? Ashley pulled a list of FEMA-partnered contractors authorized to participate in expedited disaster remediation. Charles Hinton's name wasn't just absent, it was on a watch list. A fucking watch list. "This is textbook fraud," Ashley said, flipping through the packet of evidence we were assembling. "Forgery, unauthorized entry, abuse of emergency powers. If I were cynical, I'd say this wasn't a mistake. It was theft." "Targeted," I said. "Calculated." She saw the house standing, saw no one there, decided to grab it. And now she's trying to cover it up by fast-tracking development on the lot. Ashley held up a satellite image, taken just that morning. "Look." Karen had crews out grading the land. The whole backyard was flattened. My fire pit? Gone. Raised beds? Leveled. Half the front yard had already been sprayed with those neon orange development markers. "She's not trying to erase damage," Ashley said. "She's trying to erase you." We filed an injunction that night. Emergency halt of all development on my parcel. Ashley hand-delivered copies to the sheriff's office, the city building authority, and Karen's realtor license board for good measure. The sheriff didn't look surprised, just tired. "She's pulled stunts before," he muttered. "Not like this, though. This is something else." He promised to deliver the order personally. I went home, stared at what used to be my garden, and tried to swallow the bile rising in my throat. They hadn't gotten the house, but they'd already started erasing my life. For the next 3 days, my life became a whirlwind of signatures, statements, and scanned documents. Ashley wasn't just building a case, she was constructing a legal warhead, and I wasn't just a client. I was the detonator. We started with FEMA. Ashley submitted a formal fraud complaint with supporting evidence, not just the fake documents, but also photographs of the damage, or lack thereof, before the demolition crews arrived. She included time-stamped drone footage we managed to get from a volunteer in the local Firewatch group. It clearly showed my house standing while bulldozers rolled in. Her email subject line read, "Unauthorized demolition of standing residential property during declared emergency, suspected real estate fraud." The response came faster than expected. FEMA's Legal Compliance Division flagged it for immediate escalation. Within 24 hours, they requested a call. The agent we spoke with, a woman named Lorraine Mallory, was quiet during Ashley's summary. Then she asked one question. "Was this site part of any federal assistance zone?" "No," I said. "Not that I'm aware." "Then how did a non-participating HOA submit a FEMA-based demolition request?" Ashley smiled like a lioness scenting blood. "That's exactly what we want to know." Lorraine confirmed it. "No FEMA clearance, no partnership contractors assigned, no structural damage assessments registered to my parcel. According to every federal record, my house was not on any list of condemned properties. But someone had submitted a forged urgent mitigation request using an outdated emergency clearance form, likely copied from FEMA's wildfire directives from 5 years ago. It was an old scam template. Ashley leaned in. "If this happened here, it may have happened elsewhere." Lorraine agreed. She'd seen 2 other suspicious clearance requests from the same zip code, both submitted within days of mine. Both attached to parcels that, as of last month, had been sold to a development group called Silver Valley Restoration, LLC. I blinked. "That sounds familiar." Ashley tapped at her tablet, frowning. Then she held it up. "Guess who co-signed the Articles of Incorporation? Karen Hale." It was all starting to line up. Karen hadn't just mistaken my house for abandoned. She had a system. Wait for disaster, declare the home unsafe, submit fake paperwork, demolish it, sell the land to herself, or at least to a shell company she controlled, then flip it later when no one's looking. We pulled up county sale records. There it was. 1 lot, 2 streets over, demolished under urgent HOA action, purchased last month by Silver Valley Restoration for $80,000, well below market rate, and currently listed for resale at $275,000. I'm going to be sick, I muttered. Ashley didn't flinch. No, you're going to be in court. She was already drafting subpoenas, but we needed more than documents. We needed someone inside the HOA, someone who'd voted yes, someone who could crack. That's when Trevor came over. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hands were trembling as he held out a manila folder. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know what she was doing." I opened the folder. It contained minutes from the so-called emergency meeting. Karen had listed me as presumed deceased. She included fake testimony from a neighbor claiming to have seen my truck overturned near a burn zone, and even added a note that next of kin could not be located. There was no vote. Just Karen checking boxes and signing names. She told us it was urgent, Trevor said. Said the longer we waited, the more we were risking flare-ups. And when I asked about contacting you, she snapped at me. Said FEMA had already ruled that your house was unsafe. And she told me she'd make sure the HOA covered the costs. Ashley flipped to the back page. "This is all her handwriting." Trevor nodded. "She made me sign, said it was just a cleanup consent form. I didn't know it meant demolition." He looked ashamed. Ashley handed him a glass of water. "You just became a witness." Trevor nodded again, slower this time. "If she did this to you, maybe she did it to the Swensons too. Their place disappeared overnight. They haven't been back since the fire. We added them to the list. That night, Ashley filed a full case brief with the Sonoma County District Attorney's Office. She also contacted the California State Bar, the Real Estate Board, and the State Attorney General's Office. She did it all while sipping lukewarm instant coffee and muttering case codes under her breath. Meanwhile, I walked my ruined lot. The backyard that once held my dad's old barbecue, the pavers I laid with my own hands, the small cedar my sister gave me for my 30th birthday, all gone. What wasn't gone was the foundation, that stubborn stone ring beneath the ash and splinters. It was cracked in one corner, sure, but still there, still solid. I took a picture of it, just the stone under the stars with a burnt shovel leaning against it like a flag on a battlefield. Then I emailed it to the local news station. Subject line: "She tried to bury me. She missed." It didn't take long for the story to go nuclear. 2 days after I sent that email to Channel 8, they called me back. A reporter named Kylie Tran came out to the property with a cameraman and a pair of steel-toed boots. She didn't blink at the soot or the broken glass, just asked questions, listened, took notes, filmed the stone ring of my foundation and the blackened, empty lot where my home used to be. I showed her the documents, the fake FEMA form, the bogus structural report, a photo of Charles Hinton holding hedge clippers from 2 years ago. She took it all in with the same grim expression of someone watching a horror movie play out in real life. That night, the story aired during the evening news. Local hero's home demolished while he fought fires. HOA under investigation. They ran footage of me in my fire gear, helmet tucked under my arm, smoke behind me. Then they cut to the crater where my house had stood, and finally to Karen, smiling at a ribbon cutting from some HOA barbecue last spring. The contrast was effective. The reaction was immediate. By morning, I had over 100 emails, dozens of messages from other homeowners. 3 separate families claimed they had similar experiences after the 2020 glass fire, mysterious demolitions, paperwork that never checked out, lots that were cleared and sold behind their backs. One man, retired Navy named Don Keel, sent Ashley a scanned HOA resolution from 2 years prior. Different neighborhood, same zip code, same format, same font, even the same forged FEMA header. He said he'd never signed anything. Claimed his late sister's house was bulldozed while he was at her funeral. Ashley's eyes narrowed. This isn't just fraud. This is a pattern, a racket. By noon, Channel 8 ran a follow-up. Then regional outlets picked it up. Sacramento, San Francisco, even an AP Wire blurb. Wildfire volunteer returns to find home raised by HOA. Karen tried to fight back. She released a statement through the HOA board. In times of unprecedented emergency, difficult decisions must be made quickly to protect lives and property. We stand by our actions, taken in good faith and under extreme circumstances. Ashley laughed when she read it. You don't stand by forged FEMA authorizations. The HOA doubled down. They issued another press release announcing the Karen Hale Emergency Relief Pavilion to be constructed on vacant community space graciously donated by absent or unclaimed parcels. My lot, my land, labeled unclaimed. It was pure madness. But to the public, it was fuel. One reporter caught up with Karen outside a city council meeting, microphone in her face, cameras rolling. Ms. Hale, did you authorize the destruction of a standing home without confirming the owner's death? Karen smiled. I was told the home was structurally compromised and abandoned. The reporter, by who? Karen, consultants. Do you know Charles Hinton is not licensed? That smile cracked. Ashley called it a public unraveling. But the real explosion came 2 days later when FEMA's Office of the Inspector General opened an official investigation. Their fraud division issued a subpoena for HOA records, contractor payments, and all communication between Rolling Pines and Silver Valley Restoration. And then came the search warrants. Karen's office was raided by the county sheriff's department. Boxes of files, hard drives, 2 phones. The HOA clubhouse was taped off like a crime scene. Neighbors stood around whispering, snapping photos. Some cheered. Trevor texted me a picture. Karen standing outside her car, arms crossed, jaw tight as officers carried out boxes. $10 says she bolts, he wrote. Ashley didn't even look up from her screen. Her passport was already flagged. She's not going anywhere. What came next was a deluge. Former HOA members came forward, contractors who'd been pressured into silence. A temp from the county records office admitted Karen had bribed her to fast-track property assessments during wildfire season. Even a realtor who'd worked with Karen confessed to filing fake seller affidavits. It was a full-blown scheme. Karen had exploited California's emergency disaster provisions to seize lots, using forged paperwork, insider contacts, and scare tactics. She used HOA votes as cover, crafted a network of shell buyers, and flipped scorched land for massive profit, all while positioning herself as a community leader and disaster recovery coordinator. Ashley updated our civil suit to include conspiracy, wire fraud, and racketeering. The DA filed criminal charges, 5 counts, including felony fraud during a state of emergency. And through it all, I stayed right there. Boots on my scorched ground, watching the parade of chaos unfold from the porch that no longer existed. The last thing I expected was what came next. The governor's office called. They wanted to meet. Apparently, the firefighter who got bulldozed by his HOA was now a symbol, a case study, a cautionary tale. They asked if I'd testify in support of emergency powers reform, maybe even appear at a press conference. I said yes. But first, I had a date in court. The courthouse was buzzing. The morning of the preliminary hearing, I walked through the doors of the Sonoma County Superior Court in borrowed dress shoes and a suit jacket that hadn't seen daylight since my cousin's wedding. Ashley, crisp in a navy pantsuit, marched beside me like a prosecutor out of a legal drama. I hadn't even made it through the metal detector before a clerk leaned over the desk and said, "You're the guy, right? The one with the bulldozed house." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The courtroom was packed. Not just media, though there were plenty of them with their tripods and badges, but neighbors, county officials, even a handful of firefighters from Station 49. They nodded when I walked past, eyes hard. Solidarity. Karen sat at the defense table in a beige suit, hair pulled back tight. Not smug anymore, just brittle. Her attorney, some expensive-sounding guy from San Francisco, whispered into her ear. But she didn't look at him. She looked at me. I didn't blink. The hearing was supposed to be procedural, just to schedule motions, set the timeline. But the DA came in hot, pushing for immediate restrictions. They presented the forged documents, the FEMA denials, the HOA meeting minutes with dead signatures. They even introduced a sworn affidavit from Trevor, who had officially flipped. Ashley leaned in and whispered, "She's going to lose bail." She was right. The judge listened, reviewed the exhibits, then calmly revoked Karen's travel rights and ordered her to surrender her passport. She was placed on house arrest with an ankle monitor. Karen tried to protest. Her lawyer claimed it was a misunderstanding born out of chaos. The judge didn't even flinch. Afterward, Ashley and I walked out into the bright sun, surrounded by a flurry of questions. I kept my mouth shut, let the lawyers speak. But one camera caught the look on my face. Tight jaw, tired eyes, and just the edge of something harder underneath. That image ran on the front page of the Chronicle the next day with the headline, "Burned but not broken, volunteer firefighter fights back." By then, the civil suit had been scheduled too. Ashley's filings had grown into a 3-inch binder. Fraud, trespass, destruction of private property, conspiracy to defraud under emergency status, emotional damages, and punitive claims. She wasn't aiming low. She wanted blood and money. The judge in the civil case ordered a forensic audit of all Rolling Pines HOA decisions over the last 5 years. That's when we struck oil. Turns out Karen had been playing this game for longer than anyone knew. A total of 6 properties had been cleared following wildfires since 2019. 3 of them had belonged to absentee owners. 1 was in probate. None of them had ever received legitimate demolition orders. And in every single case, the land had ended up in the hands of a shell company, all tied to Silver Valley Restoration LLC. The books showed transfers, money laundering, and false appraisals. Karen had created a paper trail so carefully stitched together that even the county assessor's office hadn't caught it. But now, under court order, everything unraveled. The HOA was ordered to produce full records, including emails, meeting minutes, and accounting. That's when they tried to stall. Karen's remaining allies on the board resigned en masse. The treasurer disappeared, left the state. One of the contractors filed bankruptcy. It didn't matter. Ashley pressed the court to freeze HOA assets and put the board under court supervision. The judge agreed. Rolling Pines was placed under administrative control by the county. Its charter was suspended pending legal review. For all intents and purposes, the HOA was dead. And still, Karen sat in her house, flanked by lawyers, insisting it had all been for the good of the neighborhood. I was there when they served the seizure notice. Sheriff's deputies arrived with a court order to confiscate her devices. Karen tried to argue. Then they found the external hard drive she'd hidden behind a false panel in her home office, encrypted. But not well. The techs cracked it in 2 days. Inside were emails, invoices, sale records, dozens of files that linked Karen directly to the fraudulent FEMA submissions. She had templates, instructions, even practice versions with notes like, "Clean this one up before filing," and "Don't forget to change the dates." Ashley read them one by one in court. Karen sat motionless, pale, as the prosecution requested an expansion of charges: criminal conspiracy, federal fraud during a declared emergency, and attempted illegal seizure of private property valued at over $1 million. The judge approved. Karen's bail was officially revoked. She was arrested on the spot. The last I saw of her that day was through the glass of a sheriff's cruiser, hands cuffed in her lap, staring at the courthouse steps like they'd betrayed her. But they hadn't. Justice had just come home. They held the criminal trial in Santa Rosa under high security. By then, Karen Hale had become something between a meme and a cautionary tale. The local press called her the Ash Baroness. The national outlets went with the Bulldozer Queen. I kept my TV off for most of it. Watching her smirk on split screens while talking heads debated whether this was an isolated case of poor judgment or evidence of systemic abuse made my stomach turn. It wasn't systemic. It was intentional. And now it was my turn to prove it. Ashley coached me for hours before my testimony. Not just the facts, we had those down cold, but the tone, the poise, the delivery. "You're not here to vent," she said. "You're here to bury her in evidence and calm, righteous clarity." I took the stand on the 4th day of trial, swore in, looked straight ahead. I told them everything: how I stayed behind to fight the fire, how my house survived, how I came home to find bulldozers chewing up the place my grandfather built with his bare hands. I showed them the forged FEMA forms, the fake assessments, the bulldozed fire pit, the burned lawn chairs, the picture of my stone foundation under a night sky. I told them about Karen's words, "You were presumed dead," and how she didn't even flinch when I told her I was alive. I told them how she smiled when she said my land was ideal for a pavilion. They listened. The prosecutor followed with the digital evidence, the emails from her hard drive, the forged contractor records, the matching patterns of abuse across multiple parcels. The FBI agents confirmed the chain of transactions through shell companies. FEMA investigators laid out how she'd submitted a dozen fraudulent expedited clearance requests, most of them in her own handwriting. But it was Trevor's testimony that sealed it. He took the stand with shaking hands, looking down at his lap. "She told us Ithan was dead. She said the longer we waited, the more we were endangering the neighborhood. She said FEMA had already approved it. I didn't know it was all fake. He looked up then, right at me. I saw him walking back up the road 2 days later, covered in ash. Alive. And I realized we didn't just demolish a house, we tried to erase a man. Karen's defense tried everything, blamed miscommunication, blamed chaos, claimed she'd been misled by contractors, by junior staff, by imperfect information during crisis conditions. She tried to paint herself as a stressed administrator doing her best in unprecedented circumstances. It didn't work, because the evidence didn't lie, because the people she'd hurt had names, faces, homes, because I was sitting there. The jury deliberated for only 6 hours. The verdict, guilty, on all counts, fraud under emergency conditions, forgery of federal documents, conspiracy to defraud, destruction of private property, attempted unlawful seizure of real estate, abuse of position in a civil organization. Then came sentencing. The judge didn't hold back. He listed every instance of abuse, every falsified clearance, every dollar traced back through her network of shell companies. He described her actions as a coordinated campaign of opportunistic looting masked as community management. Then he read the sentence: 15 years in prison, minimum of 10 without parole. Karen didn't cry. She just stared straight ahead, stone-faced. Maybe she'd seen this moment coming for a long time. They let her out in cuffs, orange jumpsuit already zipped. The media surged forward, flashbulbs popped. The court officers pushed everyone back. And then, just like that, she was gone. The HOA, meanwhile, was dissolved by court order, all contracts reviewed, all assets frozen, the subdivision's charter rescinded. The county appointed an independent oversight board to handle all former HOA-managed properties. Homeowners were offered legal guidance to disentangle themselves from the shell corporations Karen had wrapped them in. It took months to untangle the mess, but the damage had been stopped. Karen's developers were stripped of their licenses. Charles Hinton disappeared. Rumor was he fled to Nevada. Ashley filed a separate class action suit on behalf of the other families. That would take time, but the foundation had been laid. Literally. Because that week, the foundation of my old house, charred, cracked, but still standing, became the cornerstone of something new. A grant came through from the state Wildfire Recovery Fund. The governor himself signed it. Full reimbursement for the rebuild. Materials, labor, permits, covered. They even included a line item for historical reconstruction. I'd submitted my original floor plans, the same ones my grandfather sketched in 1954 on lined paper. The state approved it. We broke ground the next morning. Construction took 5 months. That might not sound fast, but when you're rebuilding a house from near nothing, especially one rooted in family history, in pain, in ash, it feels like both an eternity and a miracle. They let me lay the first brick. It was a new one, smooth and red, but I placed it right next to one of the original foundation stones, still scorched at the edges, still cracked from the weight of a lie. I didn't replace that old stone. I preserved it. That crack meant something now. It meant we'd been broken but not destroyed. It meant something had stood here, even when someone tried to erase it. Neighbors helped. The ones who used to cross the street when I walked by were now handing me coffee and offering to help install window frames. One guy from the HOA's former security committee, who once fined me for using the wrong color mulch, showed up with his teenage son and helped hang drywall for 8 hours straight. Nobody said the word Karen. They didn't have to. That name had become radioactive. Ashley visited on weekends. She brought pizza and paperwork. The civil suit against the former HOA was still ongoing, and she was building it like a cathedral. Slow, methodical, unstoppable. But she smiled more these days, said it was good to see something actually being built for a change. The final inspection passed on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, I stood at the front steps of my new home, still smelling faintly of cedar and fresh paint, surrounded by friends, reporters, a few state reps, and the same camera crew that had filmed the crater where my house used to be. There was a ribbon stretched across the porch. I held the scissors. Before I cut it, I looked up at the plaque mounted beside the front door. Bronze, subtle, but it said exactly what needed saying. Restored from the ashes of fraud. A home that stood through fire, lies, and bulldozers. Rebuilt by truth. I cut the ribbon. Applause followed. People smiled. Some cried. Even the fire chief came by and gave me a bear hug strong enough to crack ribs. Later, after the crowd had left and the sun dipped low over the hills, I sat on the porch with a bottle of good bourbon and just listened. The wind in the trees, a few distant coyotes, no sirens, no shouting, just peace. Then I turned on the TV, just out of habit. A segment was playing on the local news. The camera panned across a prison yard somewhere upstate. The anchor's voice was calm and practiced. Inmate Karen Hale, former HOA president convicted of disaster fraud, began her 15-year sentence last month. Authorities say she is under federal watch, with further charges pending in a multi-county investigation. They showed her through a window, orange jumpsuit, hair tied back, eyes hollow, watching TV, watching me. The anchor said my name next. Was present at the reopening of his restored home today, where community members and fire officials recognized his resilience and service. The camera showed me cutting the ribbon. Karen stared at the screen. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. She just watched, and I raised my glass. To old homes, I said aloud, and older grudges. The stars came out over Sonoma, and for the first time in months, I slept inside my own house. Real walls, real roof, real peace. And this time, no one tried to take it away.